The sun was just rising over the horizon, casting a soft golden glow across the barracks. I had been awake for hours, my mind restless as it often was before deployment rotations. My rifle lay next to me, neatly polished, and the quiet hum of the base seemed almost peaceful. But peace was a foreign concept for someone like me. In the distance, I could hear the faint laughter of fellow soldiers, teasing and joking, oblivious to the storm brewing in my own heart. And then the call came, not the ones I was used to: orders, supply updates, or messages from the squad, but a call that would shatter the fragile calm I had built around myself. My mother's voice trembled as she spoke, her words slow and hesitant, almost afraid I would explode over the phone. "Sweetheart, we sold the Lakehouse." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Sold the Lakehouse. My chest tightened, a strangled gasp escaping my lips. My hands, calloused from years of training and duty, shook as I gripped the phone tighter. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to break something as punishment for the betrayal, but I was 300 miles away. I was deployed in a desert that knew nothing of snow-tipped mountains or the quiet lull of waves against the shore. I was trapped in a uniform, in duty, in helplessness. "That can't be, you can't do that." I managed, my voice cracking, disbelief drowning the anger. "That house that was mine, it's our family's lake house. You can't just sell it." "I'm sorry, honey," my mother said softly, too softly. "We thought, your father and I, we thought it was the right time, the market was good. We didn't think it would hurt you this much." The words were venom wrapped in sugar. "We didn't think it would hurt you, of course they didn't." They weren't the ones who had spent every summer of my childhood there, fishing off the old wooden dock, the sun scorching our backs as we laughed and fought and lived. They weren't the ones who had countless memories tucked into every corner. The fireplace scarred from our clumsy attempts at cooking, the walls decorated with my sketches, the creaky stairs that had witnessed so many first steps, first falls, first loves. It wasn't just a house. It was a testament to our family, to years of devotion and joy and love. I could feel the anger boiling now, hot and red, curling in my stomach like a living thing. My father's voice, when he finally came on, was calm, too calm, like he had rehearsed his lines. "You'll understand when you get back," he said. "Understand. Understand the betrayal, the theft of something sacred, the sheer disregard for my feelings while I was out there, risking my life for a country that didn't even notice." I sat down on the edge of my bunk, gripping the phone as tears threatened to spill. I hated them in that moment. I hated them with a depth I had never known, and it scared me. They had sold my sanctuary, my refuge, my most cherished possession, and they had done it while I was defenseless, caught in the middle of endless sand and sun. I had trusted them, and they had stabbed me in the back. All I could do was promise myself something quietly, under my breath, as the sun climbed higher over the desert horizon. I would make them pay. Not with violence, not with physical revenge, but in a way that would leave no doubt in anyone's mind that betrayal has consequences. They had underestimated me. They had assumed that distance, deployment, duty, and loyalty would make me passive. They were wrong. The rest of the day was a blur. Every order, every drill, every shouted command felt heavier than usual. My mind wasn't on tactics or survival. It was on justice, on the Lakehouse, on the memories they had tried to erase. Each sunset over the barren landscape was a reminder that I had been robbed, and each sunrise a promise that I would reclaim what was mine. By nightfall, I sat alone under the stars, the desert wind whispering around me. I closed my eyes and pictured the lake, the water reflecting the sky like a mirror. I pictured the house, the smell of pine and wood smoke, the laughter of my childhood echoing in every room. And I swore, quietly but firmly, that betrayal would not go unpunished. One day my parents would see the full measure of the hurt they had caused, and I would make sure the memory of this moment haunted them forever. The moment I stepped off the plane, air felt heavier than I remembered, thick with humidity and the faint smell of gasoline. Home, or what was supposed to feel like home. My heart pounded as I drove through familiar streets, each one whispering fragments of a life I thought I knew. But the Lakehouse, the sanctuary of summers, of laughter, of everything I had loved, was gone, sold. My parents had taken a sledgehammer to my memories, wrapped it in a deed and signatures, and handed it over to strangers. I parked outside my childhood home, the one I had grown up in, and stared at it in silence. The car felt foreign beneath me, and my hands itched not for violence, but for action. I needed answers, and more than that, I needed a way to make them understand the magnitude of their betrayal. My father was in the garage, tinkering with his old pickup, pretending life hadn't just pulled the rug out from under me. My mother was in the kitchen, calm, serene, offering a smile that was far too practiced to be genuine. "I want to know why," I said, stepping into the room. "Why you sold it, who signed it, why you didn't even tell me." My voice was steady, but inside, it quivered like a wounded animal. Father wiped his hands on a rag, pretending nonchalance. "We thought you'd appreciate the financial sense of it," he said. "The market was perfect, and we acted in your best interest." I laughed, a sharp, bitter laugh. "In my best interest, while I'm serving overseas risking my life. You sold the house I grew up in. You sold me best interest, really?" He flinched just slightly, but his eyes were calculating. Mother's lips pressed into a thin line, but her hands never wavered from folding the napkins on the counter. The calm mask was infuriating. I didn't speak for a long while. I left that night with a single purpose: to investigate. I hired a lawyer, someone who had dealt with complex property disputes and shady transactions. Every document I could get my hands on told a story of deceit. The sale had been rushed, orchestrated with a combination of forged signatures and legal loopholes my parents knew I couldn't access while deployed. The lawyer called it premeditated betrayal. I called it a war declaration. Days turned into weeks. I dug through old emails, bank statements, and property records, each discovery sharpening the fire in my chest. I learned that my father had approached the buyer months before I even left for deployment, discussing prices, terms, and handshakes that excluded me entirely. My mother, quieter but equally complicit, had signed off on every deal, her calm demeanor masking a lifetime of subtle resentment at my independence, at the dreams I carried, at the life they had slowly lost control over. Memories came back in waves. Summer mornings when father taught me to fish on the dock, the scent of lake water and pine needles. Nights when mother and I baked pies in the kitchen, flour dusting the air like snow. And every memory was now tainted, tarnished by the knowledge that the people who should have protected those moments had instead sold them away. I started to plot, not recklessly, not in anger, but methodically. I gathered every piece of evidence, the emails, the notarized papers, the conversations recorded discreetly with neighbors who had seen the suspicious meetings. I traced the buyer, a wealthy couple who thought they were simply purchasing a house. They had no idea it was a fortress of memories, a battlefield of betrayal. Through it all, I kept my composure. Outwardly, I smiled, acted as though nothing had changed, but inside, a storm raged. Every phone call with my parents became a careful chess game. I asked questions, feigned ignorance, and let them reveal more than they intended. The arrogance that had allowed them to sell my lake house without consequence became their vulnerability. And I waited, patient, knowing that every misstep, every lie, would eventually become the hammer with which I would strike. By the time I stepped into the lawyer's office one rainy afternoon, documents in hand, I felt a cold, consuming clarity. I wasn't just fighting for a house. I was fighting for justice, for respect, for the principle that betrayal, even by those closest to you, cannot go unanswered. The lake house was gone, yes, but the reckoning that, I realized with a cruel satisfaction, was only just beginning. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, a sterile backdrop for the storm about to erupt. I sat at the plaintiff's table, hands folded, heart hammering, not with fear, but with a mix of righteous fury and icy determination. Across the room, my parents sat side by side, their expressions carefully neutral, as though they could somehow armor themselves against what was coming. But I saw it in my father's tight jaw, in the subtle twitch of my mother's hand. They knew the reckoning had arrived. My lawyer, sharp and composed, gave me a small nod. "Remember, stay calm. Let the evidence speak for you. Calm." I could try to be calm. I could let the evidence speak, but the anticipation made my stomach churn. Years of betrayal, every stolen memory, every empty apology. It all funneled into this room. The judge entered, an imposing figure with sharp eyes that seemed to dissect the air itself. Silence fell, papers shuffled, statements were read, evidence laid bare. Emails, notarized documents, financial records, witness statements. Each one was a dagger. Each one a testament to the premeditated betrayal my parents had orchestrated while I was serving overseas. When it was my turn to speak, I rose. My legs felt heavy, but my voice was strong. Your Honor, this house was more than property. It was a part of my life, my childhood, my memories. My parents sold it while I was deployed, while I was risking my life for this country, and they did it without my knowledge, without my consent. I am not asking for sympathy. I am asking for justice. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. I saw my father shift in his seat, a flicker of panic in his eyes. My mother remained still, her posture rigid, almost regal, but there was tension beneath it, a crack in the armor she had worn for so long. My lawyer stepped forward, presenting the financial trail, the communications, the evidence that left no room for doubt. The courtroom air thickened with every revelation. How they had approached the buyer months before deployment, how the signatures had been manipulated, how every decision had been made to exclude me. My parents' careful facade began to crumble, their arrogance giving way to desperation, and then came the final blow. I spoke again, my voice quieter but sharper than before. They didn't just sell a house. They tried to erase my life, my memories, my bond with the family I loved. Betrayal like this deserves accountability. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing, scanning the evidence, and then fixing on my parents. It is clear to this court that this sale was conducted in bad faith, without the knowledge or consent of the rightful owner. The actions of the defendants constitute not just a breach of trust, a deliberate act of deception and betrayal. My father's face paled, his hands gripping the edge of the table. I could feel his panic radiating, even from where I stood. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. My mother's eyes flickered briefly toward him, a mixture of fear and cold detachment. The judge's voice cut through the tension like a hammer. Therefore, the court orders that the sale be reversed, restitution made to the plaintiff, and appropriate penalties applied to the defendants for their misconduct. Let this serve as a reminder that betrayal, even within a family, has consequences. And then it happened. My father slumped forward, his knees giving way beneath him, a gasp escaping his lips as if the verdict had physically struck him. The court staff rushed to his side, but I barely noticed. I didn't feel triumph in the collapse itself. I felt the quiet satisfaction of justice finally delivered, the vindication of every moment I had spent fighting, planning, and enduring the pain of betrayal. My mother, ever composed, said nothing. Her silence was louder than any words she could muster. I understood then that this was the moment I had been waiting for, not just the legal victory, but the emotional reckoning, the moment when the magnitude of their actions finally confronted them face to face. As the gavel struck and the courtroom emptied, I lingered a moment, my eyes on the Lakehouse that I had won back, my memories intact and honored. I felt a strange mix of relief, sorrow, and empowerment. Justice had been served, yes, but the scars of betrayal would remain, etched in the heart and in memory. Outside, the air was fresher, lighter, as if the weight of the storm had lifted. I walked toward the lake, imagining the wooden dock, the gentle lapping of waves, the sun reflecting off the water like liquid gold. The house stood proud in my mind's eye, untouched by greed, a symbol of what I had fought for and won. And as I breathed in the crisp air, I realized that revenge had its sweetness not in the suffering of others, but in reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your memories. The lake was quiet, the morning wrapped in a delicate fog that blurred the line between water and sky. I stood on the dock, my boots sinking slightly into the soft wood beneath me, and inhaled the crisp scent of pine and fresh water. It smelled exactly as I remembered, like home, like summers and childhood laughter, like everything my parents had tried to erase with their betrayal. And yet, somehow, it felt different, empty, but full at the same time, as though the memories themselves had returned to stand guard over this place. After the courtroom showdown, life didn't simply return to normal. My parents avoided me, their pride shattered and their arrogance replaced by a brittle, uneasy silence. I didn't reach out, and they didn't try to rebuild bridges. The bond we had was broken, irrevocably, by greed and betrayal. And though part of me ached for the family I had lost, another part of me felt relief. Justice had been served, and with it came the freedom to reclaim my own life. I walked through the lake house, each step resonating with echoes of the past. The floors creaked the same way they always had. The fireplace still held the faint scent of wood smoke from summers long gone, and the walls bore the marks of childhood drawings and memories. This house had survived the sale, the deception, and the years of absence. It was more than a structure. It was a testament to resilience, to the fact that some things, memories, love, the essence of who we are, cannot be bought or sold. Sitting on the porch, I let my mind wander. I thought of the nights I had spent planning, investigating, gathering evidence, and preparing for the courtroom. Each step had been painstaking, each revelation a mixture of grief and resolve. I realized now that the process had changed me. I had grown stronger, sharper, more certain of myself. I had discovered a reservoir of patience and courage I hadn't known existed. And most importantly, I had learned that standing up for yourself, no matter how much it hurts, is a form of love. Love for yourself, love for your memories, love for your life. I glanced across the water and imagined the sun reflecting off the ripples. A reminder that time moves on, indifferent to suffering or joy. The lake house had been stolen from me once, but now it was reclaimed. It was a sanctuary not just of memories, but of triumph, of perseverance, and of survival. I could let the anger fade, knowing that the victory was complete, and yet I would never forget. Betrayal leaves scars, but it also teaches lessons that nothing else can. In the weeks that followed, I began the slow process of healing. I repaired small parts of the house, refinished the dock, repainted walls that had been dulled by neglect. Each act was therapeutic, a ritual of reclamation. I invited old friends, family members who had supported me from afar, to visit. Laughter returned to the lake house, not the carefree laughter of childhood, but something richer, tempered by experience and the bittersweet knowledge of what had been lost. I also learned to forgive, not my parents, for forgiveness would feel like weakness, but myself. I had doubted my instincts, questioned my right to stand up, and felt powerless while deployed. But now, with justice served, I understood that the true measure of victory is not revenge alone, but the courage to face betrayal, endure pain, and emerge intact. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, I sat on the dock, my feet dangling over the water. I closed my eyes and let the wind carry away the remnants of bitterness that still lingered. In that quiet, reflective moment, I realized that I had not only reclaimed a house, but a part of myself that I had feared lost. I had learned that betrayal could wound, but it could also strengthen, that revenge could be sweet not in cruelty but in justice, and that healing was possible even after the deepest cuts. I opened my eyes and smiled faintly. The lake stretched out before me, calm and eternal. The house stood proudly behind me, a fortress of memories and triumph. And in that moment, I knew that life would go on not as it had before, but better, richer, and stronger. I had faced the worst of betrayal and survived, and in doing so, I had discovered a truth more powerful than any court ruling, that some things, courage, memory, and the will to reclaim your life, can never be sold, stolen, or destroyed. The sun sank lower, the water shimmered, and I felt, for the first time in months, the weight of peace settling into my chest. The lake house was mine again, and with it came something far greater, the knowledge that I had endured, that I had triumphed, and that I could finally begin to heal.